Hello and welcome to News Central Television. This is News Now with me, Joe Hanson. Let's take a look at the top stories for this hour. NLC President Joe Ajaero released after 15 hours in DSS custody. NCC moves to enhance security in mobile communications, launches system to register and track devices. Burkina Faso military government struggles as Islamist insurgency escalates in the country. I'm Joe Hanson. We'll be back with the details. News Central now. This hour begins in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, where the Department of State Services, DSS, released Nigeria Labour Congress NLC President Joe Ajaero late Monday after detaining him for about 15 hours. Ajaero was arrested at 7 a.m. local time on Monday at Abuja's Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport while heading to the UK for a World Trade Union Congress event. Ajaero's lawyer, Abubakar Mashal, confirmed his release but said the DSS seized Ajaero's passport and required him for further questioning if needed. The arrest sparked criticism from Amnesty International and others who condemned it as an attack on human rights. The NLC called the arrest an escalating crackdown on civic space, while another lawyer, Maxwell Okwara, argued that Ajaero had informed the DSS of his travel plans. Meanwhile, still staying with the story, the Nigeria Labour Congress has condemned what it terms the brazen and illegal detention of its president, Comrade Joe Ajaero, by the Nigerian authorities without any legal warrant or justification. In a communique issued after an emergency meeting of the National Administrative Council, the NLC described Ajaero's detention as an affront to workers' rights and a violation of democratic principles, including freedom of movement and expression. It also said the action was a deliberate attempt to undermine the implementation of the new national minimum wage. An emergency National Executive Council meeting of the Congress was fixed for 9 a.m. today, September 10, 2024, to determine the next steps to counter what it described as actions against the interests of Nigerian workers. Earlier, NLC Head of Public Relations, Benson Ukwa, spoke to News Central Television on the development.
We are appalled. We are outraged by this relentless act of repression by the state. We are in a closed-door meeting this very moment. At the end of the meeting, what our response shall be will be made public. We have demanded for his immediate and unconditional release from detention. We have also demanded that this act of repression being perpetrated under the presidency of Bola Ahmed Tinubu should stop. They cannot cow Nigerians. Nigerians have a robust spirit. We are very nice people. Our niceness, our goodness should not be abused by this government. Finally, take note of this poem. When they came for the Jews, I said I was not a Jew. When they came for the teachers, I said I was not a teacher. When they came for the merchants, I said I was not a merchant. By the time they came for me, there was no one left to cry for me. Take note. Thank you.
Well, to discuss this, I'm being joined by public affairs analyst and a legal practitioner, Vincent Otaopupu. Thank you so much, Mr. Otaopupu, for being here. Joe Ajaero has been released from the custody of the DSS. Now, what are the potential reasons behind the DSS's detention of Joe Ajaero, if we want to look at it holistically? And are we likely looking at a political pressure, like you just had saying political repression, perceived threats to national security, or better still, disagreements over labor policies? What are your thoughts? What can you make out of all of this?
Okay, thank you for having me, and thank you, our wonderful audience. First off, the arrest of Mr. Ajaero yesterday has provoked contentious issues and responses, and among scholars, the arrest came at a time that is not, quite not expected. Legally speaking, every citizen of Nigeria under Section 35 of the Constitution has right to personal liberty. The Constitution says, Section 35 of the Constitution, every person shall be entitled to his or personal liberty, and nobody shall be deprived of his or her personal liberty, save in the following conditions listed. That is when someone has committed offense and is execution of an order of court. But subsection 35 sub 1c has which provides that the person liberty can be restrained for purposes of bringing the person before a court of law or upon a person reasonable suspicion for someone who haven't committed a criminal offense. This particular philosophical construction of section 35 sub 1c of 19th Constitution has been subject to, it is loose and roomy and subject to multiple interpretation, such that the security agencies have hinged on this to abuse on rights of Nigerian citizens in most cases. Now, beyond the right of liberty of this Ajaero that has been breached, his right to freedom of movement, which is granted under section 41 sub 1 of the Constitution of Nigeria, because it guarantees the freedom of movement of every person is hereby granted, including the right of egress and right of ingress, to go out of Nigeria and also to come back to Nigeria, including right to hold passport. So those rights have been infringed, and where right has been infringed, section 46 of the Constitution says, he whose right has been infringed or is likely to be infringed should approach the court for redress. Because we say in law, you be jus, you be remedium. Where there is right, there is remedy. So he can exploit the provision of section 46, where the rights have been infringed, to approach the court for redress. Now, the right to freedom of movement is quite encompassing. The right of liberty is quite encompassing. And you know, apart from the constitutional provision I've listed, Article 7 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights also make a concomitant similar provision relates to dignity of persons within the periphery of Africa as a continent. Likewise, Section 12 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights also provided for right to movement. Now, this case has presented itself with some kind of characteristics with respect to cases that have been determined by the Supreme Court in the previous occasions. You remember that upholding the right to freedom of movement of Nigeria, the court and judiciary, in exercise of the inherent powers under section 6 of section 6A and B of the Constitution, has asserted assertively that the right must be protected at all costs. In the case of Williams and Maja Kondomi, you know, in the First Republic of 1960, Williams happens to be the legal advisor of Action Group. There was a protection order decree that was made to restrict him within the periphery 40 radius of 4 radius of his abode, his house. He was restricted from moving out from his house for whatever justifiable law within justifiable in a democratic society. The Supreme Court said no, it had breached his right to freedom of movement, like in this case of Joe Ajaero. Now, the case of Sugar Badama versus Federal Minister of Internal Affairs has also presented a similar characteristic with what we have at hand. In that case, Sugar Badama was a member of a Borno State House of Assembly then. He was deported to Chad by the Minister of Internal Affairs then. He went to court and said, I'm a citizen of Nigeria by birth. How would they deport me to Chad as I'm no more a citizen of Nigeria? It breached my right to liberty and right to movement. Supreme Court upheld that and sustained his right and protected it and said the government acted in order to violate their powers, which constitutes a breach of the right to dignity of personal liberty and movement. Now, of similar characteristics to the case we have at hand is the case of Olisaba Koba versus DSS. Remember that Olisaba Koba, in one case, who happens to be a renowned constitutional lawyer and renowned senior advocate of Nigeria, happens to be the president of an NGO called Civil Liberty Organization, was to travel then, I think 1990-something, to travel then to Netherlands. He was invited by an NGO in Netherlands for international development and the convention or whatever. So he was at the Murtala Mohammed Airport when the DSS officers benched on him and they confiscated his international passport and only asked him he cannot travel, that he should report to their office. The next day he reported to the office. They said the officer had to interrogate him. The director was not available. The next day again he came back. They kept telling him up and down, come tomorrow, come tomorrow. He approached the court. The High Court dismissed his application and said no, that because of the inscription written at the back of the international passport, this passport at all time remains the property of the federal government of Nigeria, that you don't have right to say that it is your property, as the case may be. The case was dismissed. But when he approached the Court of Appeal, as in the judicial characteristics penchant for lucidity and abiding passion for a clear thought, adumbrated that the constitutional right of Abakoba of ingress and ingress must be protected. That section 41, which has granted right of freedom of movement of all citizens, that the lower court was wrong to have distinguished between right to hold passport and right to movement. That right to hold passport is concomitant to right to personal of liberty, of movement. You cannot separate two of them. So that's what the Court of Appeal held. That is amount to breach of his right, that the inscription at the back of the passport cannot be used as a yardstick to deny it, as a reasonable suspicion to deny a person from holding passport, especially right to egress and ingress. His appeal, the DSS appealed to Supreme Court of Nigeria, and the appeal was dismissed, and Supreme Court said no, and affirmed judgment of the Court of Appeal and said that Section 5A, that Section 5A of the Passport Miscellaneous Provision Act, have provided a remedy of which the government can follow by cancellation, by withdrawal of the passport, not physically going to take somebody's passport by force, arbitrarily, without any justifiable cause or legal impute. So this goes in all ramifications for all purposes, in all ramifications with the case at hand of Ajaero, that he should also approach court, because it doesn't matter that they have arrested him and detained him for 15 minutes or 15 hours, as the case may be. Right, when an arrest has been made without a justifiable cause, and it's wrong in law, it is wrong in law. And the fellow who's arrested can approach court for redress.
You've given us a broader explanation. I want to thank you for that and breaking it very, very incisively. But let me also ask, now we do hear that Joe Ajaero's passport has been seized, and he would need to bring himself forth to the DSS office whenever he's called upon. What do you think this would do, especially to the NLC, and not forgetting to civil service organizations that are indeed talking tough about this current administration and the decision that they've taken? Are you there? Okay, we seem to have a little network connectivity issues there, but of course, I'm sure. All right, Mr. Otakupo, I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Did you get my question?
No, I didn't get your question.
Good. Let me reiterate once more. I said the passport, the NLC president's passport, has been seized, as we can also confirm, and he would be called upon by the DSS, and he needs to present himself whenever he's called upon. What do you think this would do to the NLC, and most importantly to other civil rights organizations who have been talking, and what impact do you think this would have going forward?
The seizure of his passport without a justifiable, reasonable cause, without judicial imputes, constitutes a breach of his right to freedom of movement, like I've explained in the case of Abakoba versus DSS. The Supreme Court have emphasized that the right to personal liberty, especially the right, section 35, sub 2 and 3. Sub 2 says that the person shall be entitled to a legal practitioner of his choice. He is not free to answer any question or make any statement without his lawyer. Then sub 3 says that the person shall be informed in a language he understands better the content and the fact leading to his arrest. He must be informed of his arrest. Now, the seizure of his passport constitutes that you have not concluded investigation, but you just want to stop him from traveling abroad. That is not welcome in a democratic society like ours. It constitutes arbitrary action of government just to cow, just to suppress, just to intimidate the citizens of Nigeria. And in a democratic society like ours, rule of law must not only triumph in a legal system, but in our body politics. Government must begin to appreciate the fact that the people live for law, and the law regulates activities of government and man. And the rule of law also provides that government must be respected, must respect the law and be subservient to the wills and capacities of the law. In the 1976 case of Marbury and Madison, the U.S. Supreme Court held that the rights of U.S. citizens are enshrined in the Constitution, and the government will not be addressed in higher apparition when the government failed to protect the rights of individuals.
All right, Mr.
So
Vincent.
the seizure of his purposes of further investigation, or to enable him to report tomorrow, or to ask him to stop him from traveling abroad is wrong.
Right,
in the case of Bull and the Attorney General, the Zimbabwe Supreme Court, even the European Supreme Court has held that the practice of arresting somebody to bring him for purposes of asking questions to interrogate him to give answers to offences is wrong in law.
Thank you. You've done justice explaining this, especially to our viewers. Thank you for your time, Mr. Vincent. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right, away from that, the Department of State Services, DSS, has clarified the visit of its officers to the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project SERAP office in Abuja on Monday. Now, in a statement on its website, the DSS denied allegations of an unlawful raid, stating that the visit was part of a routine investigation by 2 unarmed agents. The agency insisted the visit was misconstrued as harassment and intimidation. Meanwhile, SERAP has condemned the DSS's actions, calling it an invasion and an assault on the human rights community. They urge President Bola Tinubu to order an end to the intimidation and harassment. SERAP also expressed concern over the growing crackdown on human rights and called for a thorough investigation into the incident. We'll go for a short break now. When we return, the news continues here. Stay with us. And thanks for staying with us. The Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, has launched the Device Management System, DMS, to register and regulate all mobile phones on communication networks nationwide. This system is part of the NCC's new Type Approval Business Rule 2024 and requires all mobile network operators to connect to the DMS platform. The DMS will act as a central equipment identity register, tracking mobile devices through their international mobile equipment identity numbers and synchronizing them with global databases. The initiative aims to enhance security, control unapproved devices, and prevent mobile theft and fraud. Unregistered devices will be blacklisted, making them unusable within Nigeria. Well, away from that, after nearly 3 decades of reliance on imported fuel, Nigeria is on the cusp of a new era in oil production. The Dango Refinery is set to begin selling petrol in the local market, marking a significant milestone in the country's journey towards energy self-sufficiency. But as the refinery gears up for its debut, questions linger about the impact on fuel prices, monopoly concerns, and the future of the oil sector. News Central's Adeshawa Odushoga reports.
On September 15, the Dangote Refinery is expected to commence the sale of petrol in the Nigerian market. It's the first time in 28 years that the country will be refining its crude oil. Nigerians expect that having a local refinery will translate to cheaper fuel, but NNPC says there is no guarantee of lower prices associated with domestic refining of the product in the country, and this includes the Dangote Refinery. Although fears of monopoly had been raised on the side of the federal government, and for Dangote, it's the fear of the price control. But Analyst says the concept of price control negates the provisions of the Petroleum Industry Act, which was clear about the deregulation of the oil sector.
Provisions of the PIA made it so clear that we should be experiencing full deregulation following the PIA. Because if we are implementing the PIA to its fullness, these two fears could have been eliminated. That's to say, in a full deregulated economy, there won't be anything called price control.
In the first place, NNPC is not a regulator. So that's why I'm sort of baffled about Dangote talking about prices and prices having to come from NNPC. It never was even the price regulator for the industry at all. Pricing was PPPRA.
With the rising prices of oil in the global market and the value of the naira against the dollar in an import-dependent oil sector, the pricing of petrol from Dangote Refinery has become a topic of debate. Earlier in the year, a Nigerian lawmaker, James Falike, had posited that Nigeria's $48 per barrel crude production cost is the highest in the world compared to Saudi Arabia, where these only cost $9. This has raised eyebrows as a likely factor that will affect the price of petrol from the refinery, even as it is locally produced.
Prices of any commodity to the benefit of consumers should be determined by level of competition. Record have it that there is no sector that has been able to combat or to withstand intensive competition by Dangote PLC. So, if we want Nigerian citizens or consumers of petroleum products to have the benefit of it or the value for this commodity, it should be that there should be a competition in this sector.
We have had a constantly malfunctioning downstream, and we have had this subsidization for a long time. But the subsidy has been there to cover even things that should not be there.
Nigeria, which consumes about 66 million litres of petrol daily on average, currently spends a huge chunk of its budget exceeding $10 billion by some estimates on the importation of the road fuel every year. While a local refinery should translate to a breakthrough from years of import-dependent oil sector, the outcome of this pricing system remains uncertain. In Lagos, for News Central, Adeshawa Dushoga.
With the persistent fuel scarcity in the country, Nigerians have continued to lament the increase in the price of the product. In this report, News Central's correspondent Austin Azu examines how the recent development has impacted small-scale businesses, especially its operators in Delta State. Here is the report.
Queues are gradually disappearing from fuel stations across Asaba and environs, where mega fuel stations like NNPCL, Total and others sell below 1,000 naira. Others sell above the 1,000 naira threshold.
I bought fuel from NNPC 885 naira per litre.
The total fuel station we did for Asaba here, 940 per litre.
With the hike in fuel price, the prices of goods and services have equally been affected, while commercial vehicle drivers and tricycle operators seem to have adjusted their prices. Passengers appear to be bearing the brunt.
Yeah, before, for me to worry, we used to pay 3,000, 4,000, but right now we are paying 6,000.
And I believe by maybe, let's say next week now, they may still increase the price.
But how are small-scale business operators in Asaba coping with the hike of the products?
They sell the one where they sell 200, 300 because of fuel costs, everything costs, granite costs.
They don't allow us to sell mineral well because fuel costs.
News Central crew visited a barber and a tailoring shop in Asaba. While the barber works with generator to augment poor power supply from BEDC, the tailor abandoned his electric sewing machine and resorted to using the manual machine.
Everything in the business now is going down because most customers do not understand that this is what we are going through in the filling station. Normally, they don't even sell fuel in gallons anymore. So before we get fuel of 900, 600 before, we are not buying fuel in filling station 1,002, 1,001. So when you tell customer, Madam Oga, your barbing hair is 1,000, they will say, no, now how is it 1,000? Is it not 500? Is it not 800? But we are spending a lot of money to get this fuel.
The fuel increase really affected because some persons now don't have enough cash to even buy materials, and we that are still making use of a generator to sew. As you can see now, you see that I'm making use of manual because since customers are not coming, we use the one we have, because if actually there is money and the fuel is done, at least I believe there will be light here. Now this sweat now will not be sweating.
On the major roads of Asaba, a lot of passengers are on the roads, perhaps due to the new prices initiated by the tricycle operators because of the cost of buying the fuel. In Asaba for News Central, I'm Austin Azu.
Let's now move away from fuel concerns to security matters. Suspected bandits abducted 2 nurses and an unknown number of patients from the primary healthcare center in Kuyalo, Bernin-Gwari local government area of Kaduna State in an attack on Monday. According to reports, the gunmen, who were in large numbers, initially targeted a nearby Government Day secondary school around 9 a.m. but redirected the attack to the healthcare facility after finding the school empty. Musa Al-Hassan, a local vigilante leader, stated that the attackers intended to kidnap students but resorted to abducting healthcare workers and patients when no one was found at the school. This incident comes just days after a similar bandit attack in Kaduna State, with no official statement from the government yet on the latest abductions. To discuss this with me, I'm being joined by Inko Taria Ikpalibo, security expert. Thank you for being here, Mr. Ikpalibo. What are the potential motives behind the targeting of healthcare facilities in Kaduna State? We've seen this occur not just once, but of course rearing its ugly head again. It seems like health workers are the new kidnapped victims.
Well, from the reports or the information in the public domain, the initial target wasn't the healthcare workers. The bandits came for the students, and then that also reveals that they did not have enough intelligence before they carried out that operation. So for them not to know that the school had not resumed shows that they just came in to have a field day based on any vulnerable prey available to them. So getting to the school, they realized no students. They now switched to the healthcare facility, which of course was vulnerable and porous, and made it easy for them to access and then kidnap the healthcare workers. So originally, there's nothing peculiar about kidnapping healthcare workers. They are just victims of circumstances.
All right. Aside from the north, we do recall about the students, the medical students who were equally kidnapped, although they have been released now, and our reporter did justice to that story as well. And then we also have another medical worker who has been kidnapped, and it's beyond months. She still hasn't gained freedom. Hence the reason why the question was asked why health workers seem to be the target of kidnappers aside from students. But then again, let's move to the next question now. How does this incident reflect the broader trend that we see today of insecurity in Kaduna State and, of course, the region? And does it bother you that the governor hasn't even put out any statement yet?
Well, generally speaking, I've said it on your platform severally that the entire nation is vulnerable. The government, they've not put in enough effort to prevent these kidnappings from taking place. And so it just happens that the region that is suffering it the most is in the north. But then the entire nation is vulnerable.
All right. What are the implications of these attacks on healthcare delivery and access to essential services in the affected area? Now, we do know that the northern area currently, as it seems, the reports emanating from the north seems to be very, very worrisome, looking at the fact that it's almost like every week we do hear of kidnappings. We did hear of the killing of a very prominent ruler as well there. What's your take on the kidnappings that's ongoing, most importantly, now that it's affecting the healthcare system as well?
Okay, my take is that kidnapping is a crime, and the bandits are criminals. And then the government, having seen the trend that is occurring in the north, should focus on the region. If we have a comprehensive security strategy that will factor in the various elements in the north that has enabled kidnapping to thrive, it won't be too long for us to get rid of this criminal activity. So you said in the previous question you asked if it doesn't bother me that the governor has not said anything. The governor coming out to say something, at least to an extent, will comfort the families of that have been affected. But then his statement will not translate to a strategy that will prevent a reoccurrence. So beyond the statement, there should be a collaborative effort within the region among the governors and also with the federal government and other security experts to sit together and come up with workable functional strategy that will end this menace. For now, there is nothing on ground to prevent a reoccurrence. It will keep happening, not just to medical practitioners, but to all other citizens, not necessarily because of the profession that they find themselves. Nigerians are vulnerable. The government have not taken it serious to protect Nigerians, and we keep going around this circle over and over again. It's a shame.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Inko Taria, Palibo security expert here on News Now. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up next, Burkina Faso junta struggles against escalated militant violence. We'll bring you details of this story and more. Do stay with us. And thanks for staying with us. The news continues in West Africa, where an attack that killed hundreds of civilians in Burkina Faso last month has exposed the military junta's struggle to contain growing militant violence. Captain Ibrahim Traore, who took power in a 2022 coup, pledged to prioritize fighting terrorism, but experts say the situation has worsened. Burkina Faso's severe ties with France, seeking military support from Russia, Iran and Turkey, and aligning with Mali and Niger Republic. Despite these efforts, jihadist violence continues to escalate. Since 2015, over 20,000 have died in the conflict, including nearly 4,000 alone this year. Today, we'll bring you the voices of those who have escaped the violence in Gaza. They carry with them not just their stories, but the weight of their loss. A heartbreaking reality of children who are victims of the conflict as well. News Central's Bungani Siziba gives us more.
As the arrival doors opened, it was a new beginning, a second chance at life for children like Sanid Hani Muhammad, whose innocent laughter was silenced by the horrors of the war. As the crowd called out his name, he waved back with joy, the only expression of love he understood. In a land torn apart by conflict, Sanit sustained second-degree white phosphorus burns on 20% of his body and leg. His cries for help in Gaza were met with medical challenges because of the ongoing conflict. He is here now to find the care he desperately needs.
Unfortunately, the situation there is really very, very, very bad, and all the people they are struggling there, they can't leave, and in the same time, it's hard to carry on and still alive with all that things happen with.
No child deserves to suffer the way the children are suffering in Gaza, so we're just trying to do the best that we can to make a difference.
Meet Lina Zayed and Mira Baha, two brave souls who have also journeyed far from home, seeking medical help and solace from the pain they carry. For them, beacon of hope shines brightly here at Raslo Private Hospital. Together, Male SA and Palestinian Children's Relief Fund and dedicated doctors are giving them a second chance.
We are thankful in particular for this initiative that we call it Solidarity Through Healing or Solidarity Through Medication, which will be like a rolling stone that starts small and it's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And we hope that we can see a lot of people engaged in such an endeavor.
This is our first evacuation mission to South Africa. We already brought 2 cases here. Lina Bomer, she's just 17 years old, and we got Mira Baher, she's 9 years old. Both of them, they are war victims.
For the doctors here, treating these children is more than a job, it is a calling. They know the battle to heal extends beyond medical attention. It also involves lifting spirits shattered by the war.
All these patients have undergone severe trauma because of the war. Their homes have been destroyed. They've lost family members, they've lost siblings, some are orphans, and for that regard, we've now got a full-time trauma counselor on board who's assisting with trauma counseling and treating their post-traumatic stress syndromes as well.
Here at the same hospital, This wall is dedicated to the innocent children who lost their lives in Gaza, and it tells heart-wrenching stories for the future of some of these children that was stolen before it even began.
That wall represents the life of every child who was martyred in this war. So that when you enter our hospital, you will see this, and it will remain a memory for the children's lives who were lost in the war in Gaza.
This pain hurts me. As much as I see this, it hurts a lot.
And it's really painful to see that they haven't done their matric year, they haven't loved life, haven't seen the world in a bigger picture, and haven't gone out to have greater opportunities as they were killed in a traumatic incident.
These children are not just patients, they are a symbol of survival.
There is no life, there is no shelter. Every minute we got attacked, and there is no one day, we cannot take a rest for one day actually. So there is no any safety over there.
The language they speak is one of peace. Mira had a plea, one that transcends borders.
بغزة لسه وعايشين تحت القصف والرعب والأنابل وكل أطفال غزة عاشوا حياة كل العالم تحت الرعب والقصف والقنابل.
All this is a reminder of the harsh reality unfolding in Gaza, a reality where innocence is being lost to devastating waves of conflict. And for these children, memories of war are indelible, scars forever etched in their hearts. Mira is not just a patient, she's a symbol of survival, a reminder of the innocence shattered by war and the enduring spirit that refuses to be extinguished. As she and others heal, we are reminded that in every scar lies a story, and in every child a chance for peace. In Pretoria, for News Central, Bongani Sizila.
Very well put together report by Bongani. We'll go for a break. When we come back, we'll bring to you more stories here on News Now. And welcome back to News Now. Let's join our business team for today's business update.
The National Bureau of Statistics says the Nigerian government generated a total of 2.47 trillion naira from company income tax in the second quarter of 2024. The NBS, in its Quarter 2 CIT report published on Monday, said the amount increased by 150.83% from earnings in the first quarter. The CIT is a tax on the profits of incorporated entities in Nigeria. It also includes the tax on profits of non-resident companies operating a business in Nigeria. In Nigeria, the CIT is charged at 30% for companies with more than 100 million naira in turnover and 20% for companies with a turnover between 25 million naira and 100 million naira. A sectoral analysis of the revenue on a quarterly basis showed that agriculture, forestry and fishing recorded the highest growth rates at 474.5%, followed by financial and insurance activities 429.76% and manufacturing 414.15%. The Nigerian government's recent move to deduct a 50 naira electronic money transfer levy from customers' transactions has sparked criticism from economists who warn that the move may discourage digital transactions and harm the economy. The levy, which is set to take effect soon, will apply to every inflow of 10,000 naira and above received by customers of fintech companies. Economists believe the move was ill-timed and could have far-reaching negative consequences for the economy, particularly in the fintech sector, which has been growing rapidly in recent years. They argue that the government's desire to boost revenue through the measure may have unintended consequences, potentially harming the economy and stifling innovation in the fintech sector. Kenya and the European Union have renewed their commitment to the full implementation of the European Union-Kenya Economic Partnership Agreement, EPA, which came into force on July 1. Trade Cabinet Secretary Salim Muvia met the Director General for Trade at the European Commission, Dora Correa, in Nairobi, where the two parties hailed the deal is mutually beneficial, despite criticism from certain quarters for opening up the domestic market for tax-free goods from the 27-country bloc after 25 years. The EPA between the EU and Kenya was concluded in June last year and signed by both parties on December 18, giving Kenyan goods unfettered access to the European market except for weapons. The agreement aims to implement the provisions of the EU East African Community EPA, and it remains open to other EAC countries. And that's all on business news. I am Lekon Onobanjo.
Lobby Stars began their outing in the 2024-2025 Nigeria Premier Football League NPFL season with a goalless draw against Akwa United. Despite the commendable performance from the Alia boys, the Promise Keepers held their opponents to a draw at the Lafayette City Stadium. The game failed to produce the desired spark as both sides fired blank in a keenly contested tie. Late in the second half, Amadou Liman of Lobby Stars thought he had given his side the opener when he fired the ball into the net from close range, but the referee called it an offside. The visitors were resolute to hold their hosts to a draw to conclude the round of matches for match day 1. And moving on, Nigeria Super Eagles will take on the Amavubi of Rwanda in a crucial 2025 Africa Cup of Nations AFCON qualifier at the Amahoro Stadium in Kigali on Tuesday. The match is set for 2 p.m. Nigeria, currently at the top of Group D, is looking to build on their recent 3-0 victory over the Republic of Benin. Rwanda, second in the group, earned a 1-1 draw against Libya in their previous game. Libya sits in third, while Benin Republic is at the bottom of the group. Nigeria remains unbeaten against Rwanda with 2 wins and 3 draws. The Super Eagles aim to continue their strong form and secure the top spot in the group. And finally, Nigeria's under-20 women's football team, the Falconets, have touched down in Bogota, Colombia, ahead of their round of 16 fixture at the ongoing FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup. The Falconets are set to face Japan in a thrilling encounter on Friday, September 13, 2024. The Nigerian team secured their spot in the knockout stages with an impressive 4-0 victory over Venezuela in their final group stage match. The match against Japan will take place at the 10,000-seat Estadio Metropolitano de Teco in Bogota. And that does it for the news for this hour. But before we go, a quick look at some of the top stories. NLC President Joe Ajaero released after 15 hours in DSS custody. NCC moves to enhance security in mobile communications, launches system to register and track devices. Burkina Faso military government struggles as Islamist insurgency escalates in the country. You can send in your eyewitness reports to the WhatsApp number on the screen. And you can follow us on all socials. We are at News Central TV. Watch us live every day on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, YouTube, Avo TV, and you can also stream live on Facebook. I'm Joe Hanson. Many thanks for watching. Jasiri comes up next at 10 a.m. Stay with us.